This photo, taken in the 1800s, is just one of many captivating images you'll see in this video. Some of them are carefully colorized and brought to life, transforming these glimpses of the Wild West into scenes that feel almost modern. Oh, and I know what you're thinking. A woman holding a gun? In the 1800s? How? Annie Oakley was her name, but she was originally called Phoebe Ann Moses from birth in 1860, Ohio. She was known to be a remarkable woman whose name became synonymous with incredible marksmanship. Growing up in a time when survival often depended on one's ability to hunt, Annie honed her shooting skills at a young age. At just 15 years old, she entered a shooting competition against a well-known marksman who was touring the area. To everyone's surprise, including her own, Annie won the contest. That marksman, Frank Butler, would later become her husband and lifelong partner, both on and off the stage. Annie's natural talent with a gun was undeniable. Her ability to hit her target with precision and ease quickly caught the attention of many, leading her to join Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, a popular traveling exhibition that showcased the skills and culture of the American frontier. As a performer, Annie Oakley captivated audiences across the United States and Europe with her daring feats. She could shoot the ash off a cigarette, hit targets while riding a horse, and even split playing cards edge-on from a distance. These were not just party tricks. They were displays of her extraordinary skill and control. Annie's fame grew, and she became one of the most celebrated sharpshooters of her time. But her impact extended beyond her performances. In an era when women were often confined to traditional roles, Annie Oakley shattered stereotypes with her boldness and expertise in what was considered a man's domain. She became a symbol of female empowerment, proving that women could excel in fields that required strength, precision, and courage. Despite her fame, Annie remained humble and dedicated to her craft. She also used her influence for good, advocating for women's rights and teaching over 15,000 women how to use a gun for self-defense. Annie Oakley passed away in 1926, but her story continues to inspire those who hear it. But if you've heard about the legendary OK Corral gunfight, then this next photo tells an incredible story. What you're looking at here seems like an ordinary stagecoach, and you're probably thinking, what's so special about that? Well, this stagecoach may be ordinary, but it is sitting in the town of Tombstone, and that's what makes it fascinating. Tombstone, Arizona is one of the most storied towns of the American Old West, and its name conjures images of dusty streets, saloons, and gunfights. Founded in 1879 by a group of prospectors who struck silver, Tombstone quickly grew into a bustling boomtown. With its rapid growth came both wealth and chaos, as miners, gamblers, and gunslingers flocked to the town in search of fortune and adventure. By 1882, Tombstone had become a symbol of the lawlessness and rough justice that characterized much of the American frontier. Stagecoaches like the one parked on the main street were common sights, transporting passengers, mail, and valuable cargo through the treacherous desert landscape. These stagecoaches were vital lifelines connecting Tombstone to the outside world, but they were also prime targets for bandits and outlaws. Tombstone's most infamous moment came in October 1881, during the legendary shootout at the OK Corral. The battle between the Earp brothers, Wyatt, Virgil, and Morgan, along with Doc Holliday and a group of outlaws known as the Cowboys, remains one of the most famous gunfights in American history. Though the actual confrontation lasted less than a minute, its impact cemented Tombstone's place in Western lore. The tension between lawmen and outlaws in Tombstone reflected the broader struggles of the American West, where the rule of law was often enforced at the barrel of a gun. But when we talk about upholding the rule of law, this man certainly comes to mind. What are the odds that a black man born into slavery would become one of the most successful U.S. Marshals to ever live? Well, this man, Bass Reeves, answers the question. Despite the fact that he was born into slavery in 1838, Bass Reeves remains one of the most extraordinary figures in American law enforcement history. He rose above the circumstances of his birth to become the first black deputy U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi River. But the road to such glory was paved with more difficulties than you can imagine. Reeves's journey to becoming a lawman began after he escaped slavery during the Civil War, fleeing into Indian Territory, now Oklahoma, where he lived among Native American tribes. There, he learned their languages and customs, which would later prove invaluable in his work as a U.S. Marshal. His intimate knowledge of the land and its people, combined with his exceptional marksmanship and tracking abilities, made him a formidable figure in the dangerous and often lawless frontier. Appointed as a deputy U.S. Marshal in 1875, Bass Reeves quickly gained a reputation for his courage and effectiveness. Over the course of his career, he made more than 3,000 arrests, a staggering number that speaks to his relentless pursuit of justice. What set Reeves apart from many of his contemporaries was his preference to bring criminals in alive whenever possible, allowing them to face trial rather than meeting their end at the end of a gun. Nevertheless, he was forced to kill 14 outlaws in self-defense, a testament to the perilous nature of his work. Reeves's success as a marshal was not just due to his physical abilities. He was also a master of disguise, often donning various identities to get close to the criminals he was pursuing. His creativity and cunning made him a difficult man to outwit, and many outlaws were taken by surprise when they realized they had been captured by the legendary lawman. In a time when racial discrimination was rampant, Bass Reeves's achievements were particularly remarkable. He worked in a profession where his life was constantly at risk, not just from the outlaws he pursued, but also from the prejudices of the society in which he lived. Despite these challenges, Reeves earned the respect of his peers and the communities he served, proving that courage and integrity know no color. Bass Reeves retired in 1907 after more than 3 decades of service. He will be remembered as every outlaw's worst nightmare. Too bad this next outlaw wasn't around in his time. Don't let the cute face fool you. This kid was one of the most dangerous and notorious outlaws in American history. He was nicknamed Billy the Kid, but don't be fooled by that either. His real name was actually Henry McCarty. He was born in 1859. As a boy, Henry McCarty, who also went by the names William H. Bonney and Billy the Kid, found himself on the wrong side of the law early in life. His brushes with authority started with petty crimes, but they quickly escalated to more serious offenses, including horse theft and eventually murder. Despite his youthful appearance and slight build, Billy the Kid became a feared and notorious figure, his exploits capturing the imagination of the public. Billy's life took a pivotal turn when he became involved in the Lincoln County War, a violent conflict in New Mexico that pitted rival factions against each other over control of the local economy. Billy joined the Lincoln County Regulators, a deputized posse seeking to bring the killers of ranch owner John Tunstall to justice. Tunstall's murder had sparked the war, and Billy's participation in the Regulators put him at the center of the conflict. It was during this turbulent period that Billy the Kid's reputation as a deadly gunslinger was cemented. Stories spread of his involvement in numerous killings, up to 27 by some accounts, though the true number was likely much lower. His daring escapes and bold confrontations with the law only added to his legend, turning him into a symbol of the Wild West's lawlessness and the blurred lines between hero and villain. However, Billy the Kid's luck eventually ran out. In 1881, at just 21 years old, he was tracked down and killed by Sheriff Pat Garrett, a former acquaintance who had been tasked with bringing him to justice. The fatal shooting occurred in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, ending the short but notorious life of one of America's most famous outlaws. But Billy is just a student when this next outlaw's name is mentioned. No, this is not Robin Hood. It's a young man called Jesse James, and he and Billy the Kid would have been great friends. Jesse was born in 1847 in Missouri, but he grew up to become one of the most infamous outlaws in American history. His journey into a life of crime began at the tender age of 17 when he left his home to fight as a Confederate guerrilla during the Civil War. The brutal experiences he encountered during the war, particularly in the border states where violence and lawlessness reigned, shaped him into a hardened and ruthless individual. After the war, Jesse returned to Missouri, but the peace that followed did not quell his taste for violence. Instead, he channeled his skills into leading one of history's most notorious outlaw gangs, alongside his brother Frank James. The James Younger Gang, as they were known, embarked on a spree of robberies across the Midwest, targeting banks, trains, and stagecoaches. Their daring heists and ability to evade capture made them legendary figures in their time. Jesse James quickly became a folk hero, particularly in the Eastern newspapers, which romanticized him as a modern-day Robin Hood. According to these stories, Jesse was a noble outlaw, robbing the rich to give to the poor, a symbol of resistance against the corrupt and oppressive institutions of the post-war era. However, the reality of Jesse James was far less charitable. There is no evidence to support the idea that he ever shared the proceeds of his thefts with anyone outside his gang. In truth, the gang's exploits were motivated by greed and revenge, rather than any altruistic desire to help the downtrodden. Regardless, he was no stranger to the wanted poster. Despite his violent and criminal lifestyle, Jesse James managed to evade capture for many years, in part due to the support of Southern sympathizers who viewed him as a hero. But his luck eventually ran out. On April 3, 1882, Jesse James was killed by Robert Ford, a member of his own gang who had secretly made a deal with the governor of Missouri to bring Jesse to justice. The betrayal and assassination of Jesse James marked the end of an era, but it also solidified his place in American folklore as a legendary outlaw. But speaking of legendary outlaws, this next one was a woman, and every bit as dangerous as the men before her. You see the lady on the left? Her name is Belle Starr, and she was a badass. She was born in Myra Maybelle Shirley in 1848, but make no mistake, she was far from ordinary. This woman apparently was one of the most infamous outlaws in the American West. Her nickname already says it all, Bandit Queen, and during her time, her fame was all over. Her life of crime began in the post-Civil War era when the chaos and lawlessness of the frontier provided fertile ground for outlaws. She was associated with notorious figures such as Jesse James and the Younger Brothers, and she married a series of outlaws, each marriage further sucking her into a world of banditry. But make no mistake, she was also tough and strong. Known for her sharp wit, fiery temper, and unyielding independence, these qualities helped her survive in a dangerous and male-dominated world. But finally, her streak ended in 1886 when she was arrested by Deputy U.S. Marshal Charles Barnhill. The National Police Gazette, a popular publication of the time, played a significant role in shaping her image by dubbing her the Bandit Queen. The Gazette's stories portrayed her as a glamorous and daring outlaw, a woman who defied societal norms and lived by her own rules. This romanticized version of Belle Starr turned her into a larger-than-life figure, although the reality of her life was likely much grittier. Belle's criminal activities included horse theft, harboring fugitives, and possibly even orchestrating robberies, although much of her actual involvement in these crimes remains shrouded in mystery. What is clear, however, is that she became a symbol of female rebellion and lawlessness in an era when women were expected to conform to strict societal roles. Belle Starr's life came to a violent end in 1889 when she was shot and killed near her home in Oklahoma. The circumstances of her death remain a mystery, with various theories suggesting she was murdered by a rival, a disgruntled neighbor, or even a member of her own family. But there is no theory as to how much of a work of art this next photo is. In the late 1860s, the vast and rugged landscapes of the American West were being transformed by one of the most ambitious engineering projects of the era, the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. Among the many challenges faced by the builders was the task of constructing a railroad bridge in the Green River Valley, Wyoming, with the imposing Citadel Rock looming in the background. This scene, captured around 1868, represents both the natural beauty and the human determination that defined this monumental endeavor. The Green River Valley, with its sweeping vistas and towering rock formations, was a remote and challenging environment for railroad construction. Citadel Rock, a massive and solitary monolith, served as a striking landmark in this desolate region. As workers toiled to lay tracks and build bridges, the rock stood as a silent witness to the progress of a nation pushing westward. The construction of the railroad bridge in this valley was a feat of engineering that required both ingenuity and sheer grit. Workers faced harsh conditions, including unpredictable weather, difficult terrain, and the ever-present danger of accidents. Yet despite these obstacles, They pressed on, driven by the promise of connecting the East and West coasts by rail, a connection that would forever change the course of American history. But this next lady tried to change the course of her own life and failed woefully. This photo of a strapping young lady is not some professional headshot as you might think. Nope, it's actually a mugshot. Her name is Laura Bullion, and she was a notorious outlaw. In the 1890s, Bullion became associated with Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch, one of the most infamous outlaw gangs of the era. Known for their daring robberies, the Wild Bunch was involved in a series of high-profile crimes, including the Great Northern Train robbery. Laura Bullion played a role in this heist, participating alongside some of the most feared outlaws of the time, including the Sundance Kid and Kid Curry. Her involvement in these criminal activities eventually led to her arrest and a 5-year prison sentence in 1901. The mugshot taken by the Pinkerton detectives captures a young woman whose life had already been marked by adventure and crime. But behind the tough exterior was a person who would later attempt to leave her outlaw past behind. After serving her sentence, Bullion moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where she tried to start anew. She worked as a seamstress and attempted to establish herself as an interior designer, hoping to carve out an honest living in a world far removed from the lawlessness of the Wild West. Unfortunately, her efforts to build a legitimate life met with little success. Despite her determination, Bullion struggled to make ends meet, and her later years were marked by financial hardship. She lived in relative obscurity, a far cry from the notoriety she once held as a member of the Wild Bunch. Laura Bullion passed away in poverty in 1961. She lived such a roller coaster life, didn't she? Well, let's get a better idea. To breathe more life into this story, perhaps, you should hear directly from the horse's mouth.
My life was defined by courage, danger, and freedom. When I joined the gang, I became part of a legendary tale of robberies and escape. The thrills and camaraderie we shared were unmatched. But the life of an outlaw also had its dark side. The constant threat from lawmen and the separation from my family were painful. After years of hiding and being pursued, I eventually returned to civilization and found peace. My story is a testament to the fact that sometimes the allure of adventure comes with the costs of freedom.
Tragic tale, but at least this next photo has a silver lining. Literally. You see this man? He was one of the few prospects back in the 1800s that first discovered silver. You see, around 1849, everyone was searching for gold, mining, and selling. But this businessman stumbled on something else that was groundbreaking at the time: silver. This discovery occurred in the mountains, where a group of prospectors stumbled upon veins of silver embedded in rock formations that they described as calico-colored. The discovery led to the rapid establishment of a mining town appropriately named Calico, California. What began as a small operation quickly grew, and Calico became one of the largest suppliers of silver in California during the 1880s. The town thrived, attracting miners, entrepreneurs, and settlers, all eager to capitalize on the lucrative silver deposits. Calico's boom, however, was short-lived. The passage of the Silver Purchase Act in 1890, which led to a drastic drop in the price of silver, dealt a fatal blow to the town's economy. As the value of silver plummeted, the once thriving mines became unprofitable, and the residents of Calico began to leave in search of better opportunities elsewhere. By 1907, the town was entirely abandoned, its buildings left to the mercy of the desert winds. Today, Calico stands as a ghost town, a relic of a bygone era when fortunes were made and lost in the rugged landscapes of the American West. Unlike a whole town that could suddenly become bygones, this next man seemed to cheat death and time. I don't know if you noticed, but this man is very old. His name is Chief John Smith, and he's one of the oldest people ever recorded. But wait till you get a load of his nickname. He's also known as Kabe Nagwi Wens, an Ojibwe name that translates to wrinkle meat in English. He was a Native American elder from the Chippewa tribe in Cass Lake, Minnesota. His name, derived from his deeply wrinkled skin, reflected the long life he was said to have lived, and he became a figure of intrigue and respect within his community and beyond. Reports about Chief John Smith's age were often the subject of fascination and debate. Some accounts claimed he was between 132 and 138 years old when he passed away in 1922, making him one of the oldest people ever recorded. Regardless of his exact age, Chief John Smith's life was a remarkable one. He witnessed significant changes in the world around him, from the ways of his ancestors to the encroachment of European settlers and the transformation of the American landscape. His survival through so many years was seen as a testament to his resilience and the strength of his cultural heritage. Chief John Smith was known for his wisdom and his role as a storyteller, sharing the traditions and history of the Chippewa people with younger generations. His life embodied the deep connection to the land and the ancient ways that defined his people. Despite the many hardships he faced, including the loss of many of his own family members to disease and the pressures of assimilation, he remained a steadfast figure in his community. When Chief John Smith died of pneumonia in 1922, his passing marked the end of an era. And now we have reached the end of this video. Which of these photos intrigued you the most? Let us know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'd be the first to know when the next video drops.